Or do you stay here or do you? No, I stay. You stay here? Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. Close to your. One of my roommates lives in Deerfield. I was. I think that probably Bill. Yeah, this is Dad. No. Mom. Oh. Sorry. I usually have a daughter. Ray-Ban. Sounds familiar, but I'm not going to be too confident in that because that's I just know my dad. It didn't work.
Okay, polling letters. Who wanted sleeves? Anybody else want them? Anybody else?
Actually, I thought I brought mine back with me, and I definitely did.
Okay. I don't have letters with me today, but remind me and we'll get them to you.
Okay, thank you.
So you got those when you need them. Anybody else want sleeves? Okay, so get your letters ready. So where are we? We are in lecture. Oh, 2. Lecture 2. Everybody got their polling letters ready? Or at least you will when you get everything in your sleeves, right? So bring those to class. We'll be using them to test your knowledge. What I try to do is come up with questions that show where you might diverge in the wrong direction. So we're trying to make sure you're focused in and understanding the way you're supposed to. So what do we got for announcements? If anybody still wants to get in the career prep class that meets at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays, I can get you caught up. If you still want to add that extra credit, next Dairy Club meeting will be at 7 o'clock Thursday up at the Dairy Complex, and it'll be kickball or volleyball or cornhole or something just having some fun up at the dairy. The next kind of business meeting is a week from Thursday, 1 o'clock, I think, was Marshall Hall, sounded like where we're gonna be. Did that sound about right?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think we said it, but probably be on campus, 1 o'clock. Birthing center sign up. If anybody wants to help out, represent Morrisville, we got to do a better job than Cornell. They got the second week, we got the first week. Watching the birth center on the overnight, you get free parking passes, free admissions passes, and exchange for about 9 hours of work. So you need to be there, I think, at 9, and you need to, they usually relieve you by 6 o'clock in the morning. If you get 2 people, you can probably alternate and get naps through the night. So if anybody can help out with that. I think we're covered till Sunday. So then we got Sunday and Monday we got to take care of. So lab this week, tomorrow, everybody needs to come up to lab 2 and 4 o'clock. Does anybody need a ride up to the dairy? We got 1. Anybody else need a ride? 2. So which labs are you in? 2 o'clock. Is there anybody from the 2 o'clock lab that can help with rides to get them up? So right there's your ride. Anybody else need a ride? So dairy complex, we'll start in the double wide up there, and then we'll go out and get dirty, learning how to sample feed correctly. This, if you do it right and you end up living on a farm for the rest of your life, this will reimburse you for your college education, what I'm about to teach you. Everybody makes fun of me, the way I do it, but given the amount of money we spend based on samples and the samples we take, if I want to sell you feed, I know exactly how to take a sample. And it costs you an extra per 100 cows, costs you extra $1,000 a month. So I'm teaching you a skill that's worth $1,000 a month. I can pay your student loans back. So lab is 2 and 4. You just have to come to one of them. I took what you wrote down on the form down to the front office. Whatever you voted for should now match your schedule. Has anybody looked at that? Anything move around to fit your schedule?
I was already on the one that I wanted.
Okay. Anybody that switched, did you notice whether it's where you're supposed to be or not? Okay, another assignment we have, and there are 5 of them here. I want to get you guys talking. And one way to do that is to get you to ask questions. So what I have is 5 questions that are each an assignment. Now you can either ask the question during class and then write down the write down the question you had. It doesn't matter, it's administration or course content. I don't care as long as you ask questions. Or if you don't feel comfortable, write your question down on this form and turn it in at the bucket up top here. So we've got the bucket questions for Dr. Mooney, and they will be anonymous. I will answer them in the next class or 2, depending on the urgency. So everybody got a sheet. Did I get one to everybody? So these should fit in your 3-ring notebook. I would like you, if you could, put your name on them real quick. You got to do that 5 times, but more importantly, put 100 down on the right-hand side there. It's class, put 100 in that blank so I know which class, debating whether or not I'm going to do it with the second years or not. But if I've got 2 classes going, some of you are in more than one of my classes, I need to know which one it is. So you start tearing from the bottom, put your tag in the bucket, and you get credit. These are equivalent to 5 assignments. So if you look down here at the bottom, we've got the first one is due by lecture 8. Second one is due by lecture 12. 16. Working your way up, 20 and 24. Usually there's a hubbub of when they're due, everybody turns in a bunch at once. If you want to get all these done in the first week, I don't care. But we do try to get you talking, asking questions. That's the most important thing you can do in this class. Because if something is not clear, we need to make it clear so you understand what's going on in the class. So we'll turn those in. We got a bucket up here. We'll put them in. I've got extra forms here if you need them. And then I will answer them. If you ask a question in class, that counts. Just said write the question you said in class, and then it's taken care of. Any questions? There was an opportunity to get it out of the way, right? So we'll try to remember to bring that. So, okay. So the simplest carbon cycle, this is where we left off last time, was what happens in a plant where photosynthesis happens. It generates what? It stores energy. What does it generate? What is the end product of photosynthesis? Glucose. And then the plant can take that glucose, put it to where it needs to, say down in the roots where there's no photosynthesis, and then respiration takes it to CO2 and water, and we release that energy where it's needed. So that's the simplest cycle. But with photosynthesis, those products of photosynthesis move out around possibly the world, depending on what we're dealing with. You're hearing carbon offsets. We're saying that if I burn and generate CO2 on this part of the world, I will buy an offset. There's somewhere there where they're sequestering that CO2 on some other part of the world. Now, there's a lot of money being made in that world that really shouldn't be at this point. Hopefully farmers will have an opportunity to say, if I change my practices, I will have carbon credits to sell somebody that wants to offset, like no-till or other things. So going from carbon dioxide and water, gas and liquid, over to carbohydrate, solid. What are we doing? Yes.
Real quick, do we get carbon credits for cropping?
You, in theory, could, but the question is, are they worth anything at the moment?
Right.
So you're increasing the organic matter in the soil. You are putting more carbon into solid form. Right. You should get credit. Right. The thing is, you have to show that I'm changing a practice and therefore I'm increasing. I can sell that increase to somebody. But we used to do that. Carbon credits all over the place, but somehow we got out of the loop and we're not making the money we should anymore. Because farming is the only thing that does that. Turning that gas into a solid again, which is what we need to. So getting from here over to here is what? Photosynthesis. Going from here to here. Respiration. And just to be difficult, sometimes I will reverse the arrows. Instead of going clockwise, we'll go counterclockwise. So pay attention to the arrows. It doesn't really matter which one is which. So we got photosynthesis and respiration. Also associated with photosynthesis is oxygen. When the plants first started photosynthesizing, they released oxygen into the atmosphere. And the rocks that were formed when that abundance of oxygen came out are all red now because they have rust and iron and stuff in them. So millions of years ago when that process started, we need oxygen to complete respiration. So whatever carbohydrate, glucose that we have, we need oxygen to burn that back to CO2 and water. And if you do the chemistry, the equation balances the same number of carbons before and after. So the sunlight energy is captured in that glucose, in that carbohydrate, and then it's released when it's needed by living organisms, whether that be the plant itself or the animals that are unlocking that energy and using it for themselves. So since they can't drink motor oil or gasoline to get energy, this is what we need, right, to do that. So as I said, you can also reverse it. So depending on which way you go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't always have to go counterclockwise. It's a model. It's a representation. So look closely at where the arrows go. We go counterclockwise. We switch the carbohydrate and the carbon dioxide. Or if we kept those in the same place, you reverse the respiration and photosynthesis. It's a representation. So we're thinking about dairy farming. We're working down in here more often than not. So we have our plants, we grow, we generate that forage, we generate those cereal grains, we generate that plant material, and then how do we allocate that plant material for productive purposes? So if you're looking closely, we're generating glucose. There are two things that can happen to that glucose. We can use it to build other molecules, or we can burn it to CO2 and water and release the energy. So glucose is the most abundant molecule on the planet. It's all been formed by photosynthesis. That photosynthesis still has that glucose still has that energy in it until it's finally burned. If we continue to use stuff for building, that CO2, that carbon can stay in a solid form for thousands, if not millions of years. So cow eats some of that glucose in whatever form it is, grain, forage. She processes it through her body. It becomes part of lactose, milk sugar. We drink that milk, that becomes part of our body, and maybe we use it to build muscle. That carbon stays in that muscle until we die. And then it finally be released to continue on the cycle. But you can think about a number of different steps that could go through, and we'll play with that in lab. How many different steps could that carbon go through before it is once released and released as a gas? So we're thinking about what that carbohydrate, what that glucose becomes. In a plant, they have the ability to do everything. So from that basic building block, they're going to generate everything. So they may do a complex carbohydrate. Has anybody heard of that phrase before? Complex carbohydrate is a chain of glucoses usually. So in this case, with a plant, we're probably going to look at either starch or cellulose that are a chain of glucoses, those complex carbohydrates. The plants have the machinery to take that glucose, use it as a building block, and to create protein. They'll take a little bit of nitrogen from the ground, stick it on that carbohydrate, and it turns into a protein. We'll talk more about that next month. They can take that glucose and turn it into fats. Usually in a plant's case, we got the seed oil, which is a fat, or the cell membranes of each of the individual cells. Those are also made of fat. Lipids is a formal name for fats in science. So fats or lipids, those are synonyms. The plants can also take that glucose and create vitamins. So all the B's, vitamin C, D, E, A, it becomes a building block for all of the other things. And then all those things are what becomes or what turns into our plant. So using the building block of glucose and a lot of little different additions, we have the structure of the plant. We take a liquid, a gas, turn it into solid, something we can hold, something we can look at. Everybody with me so far? Any questions? So another thing we'll use on the farm is fermentation. Why do we use fermentation on the farm? Why do we use fermentation in the kitchen, on the supermarket shelf? preserve foods, right? We got to save it for a later time. But as we go through that, we take that carbohydrate, whatever form, whatever plant it is, we ferment it. We use microbes to get that done. The bugs are going to take their cut. So in hay curing, that's about 10% of the dry matter goes to the bugs. That leaves us 90% that we can feed for the cows. In silage, if we do everything right, we're going to have about a minimum of 20% of the dry matter goes to microbes. If we do a real bad job, it might be half. So that additional 30% is rot, and we just did that for fun. So we throw half our silage away. We just planted, harvested, played with all that silage just for fun, because it was waste. But in good silage, we're going to lose 20%, and we'll talk more about that in the lab. That leaves 80% for the cow to unlock, to use, to make available to her. So why do we pay that toll of 10% in making hay, 10% in making silage or other fermented products? This part of the world, we got 6 months, we got to have something to feed, so we got to preserve it. We'll talk more about that in lab. So where eventually fermentation is without oxygen, respiration comes in, we take those products of fermentation, that silage, and then burn it to CO2 and water, energy for living with that animal. So just as a note, I try to put this little star down in the corner. That means you usually have it in a handout. So if you want to be able to refer to that, sometimes I'll forget to mention it, but when that star pops up, that means usually you have that slide in a handout. So here's another representation of the carbon cycle. This is a whole lot bigger. This is kind of a worldwide view of the carbon cycle. So what we've presented so far fits right here. So going counterclockwise as opposed to clockwise, we got photosynthesis, the stuff stays in the plants, respiration, it goes back to CO2. So how much CO2 do we have in the atmosphere? That gas form, that's what the plants have access to generate solids, to get sunlight in a form that the plants themselves and other animals can consume. So they talk about just the sugars and the starches. They're also the cell wall, the cellulose. The animals can use that as well. So as they break that down, as we put it through, they're gonna do respiration. The plants will do respiration. The animals will do respiration, and they put that carbon dioxide back into the pool of gaseous carbon. Another thing this is showing that a lot of carbon has been, during growth time millions of years ago, from photosynthesis, we had animals and or plants that were collected, eventually pushed underground, and through the pressure and time turned into fossil fuels, coal, oil, all those things. We have those big pools of carbon that is no longer in gas form. Now we come along in the last 150 years and say, hey, this stuff works really well for providing energy for the processes that we do. And we've been burning that, taking it out of the ground, switching it from a solid or liquid form back to the gas. So we're adding to that gaseous pool, and that's the concern that we have, is we're getting more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And that will influence how much heat is retained as the sun radiates onto our planet. Does anybody know how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere? What percent? Or any of them, do you know how much oxygen or nitrogen is in the atmosphere? Nitrogen's about 80%. Oxygen about 20. What does that leave us? Not much, right? So those numbers, if you fudge the 80 and the 20 a little bit, carbon dioxide is 0.3 or 0.4%. So the fact that we can move that fossil fuel there, it's very easy to change the amount of carbon dioxide because we're starting with such a small number. And that's the concern moving forward. How do we get that carbon dioxide burned from fossil fuels back into a solid or liquid form and out of the atmosphere? That's going to be the challenge of your lifetime. So again, going counterclockwise, just the plant, the animals, or a more long-term cycle measured in millions of years. So it was gas 1 million years ago. It's been in a solid or liquid form since then. As we burn it, it goes back to the gas form. So any questions about the carbon cycle? So we'll play with this in lab a little bit, make sure you understand it and what we can do as we move forward. But we're trying to, as farmers, as producers, to manipulate the carbon cycle to our benefit. Not only feeding our animals, growing plants that we can sell, but in the future, we may be called upon to increase certain practices that are going to put more carbon into that solid form. So that'll be an opportunity as we move forward. So another representation of that, you have these slides in your handout. There are lots of different ways to look at this. So you have your gaseous carbon pool. We may have things going into the plant. Those plants are grown, they go in the animal, they work their way back. So you've got more convoluted approaches, but we'll spend more time on these in lab on Thursday. But as things die, they'll either be rot, respire by decomposers to CO2 and water, or under the correct conditions become fossil fuels for the future. Another representation of the same thing, trying to follow that circle that we generated. We got the gas up top. We've got stuff generated through the plants. Those things may go to, you don't really see a direct arrow, but you've got the plants here. This probably should be an arrow here and come back up. Respiration. And again, this shows that we can either build or burn. So carbon in the animals, carbon in the decomposers, carbon in fossil fuel that won't be available till a later time. So how long can we keep that cycle going? How long or how much can we keep in the solid or liquid form? So we look at how that carbon moves from animal to animal, and we'll spend more time on this in lab. You could come up with a sequence where those carbons will go from animal to microbes to animal to around. I think one year students got up to 22 steps before it became carbon dioxide again. I think we had to allow them to go to the ocean. We'll probably keep it on the land for this discussion. So again, solid form all the way back through. Not as clean a circle as you'd see before, but again, going that direction. Another thing to remember, and this is one of the things about space travel that we talked about last time, we have to have all these cycles working in a closed interstellar spaceship. And another one would be nitrogen. We got 80% nitrogen in the atmosphere. We need to keep those things moving from gas form to be fixed by plants, turned into nitrogenous compounds. That ammonia might move around. Our herbivores are going to take that ammonia and they're going to make their own protein. and we'll talk more about that next month. That protein can go from one place to another, one animal to another for many different generations. You could have, in theory, the same amino acid through every cow that's ever been in that family line. So, depending on how long that family's been around, one amino acid gets passed to the next one that stays their entire life till it's passed to the next one, passed to the next one. That stays solid for all that time. So any questions about carbon cycle? Anybody got it so far? So ready for a quiz next Monday. We'll give it a try. We'll give it a try. So, and again, as I said, the farming more often than not is a conversion of sunlight to dollars. I'm managing the environment in such a way that we're going to grow plants. I'm going to raise animals. All their solids, all their energy comes from sunlight. And hopefully we can take those products and generate dollars. That's going to be the challenge moving forward. Do we have enough to feed? What are we up to? 9 billion people? That's a lot. So another question, do you wish to be successful while you're here? Do well, learn a lot, get your finished, get your degree. Does anybody not want to do that? I have met students who don't. They're here for other reasons than education. An expensive way to go about it, but there are other ways to get involved in the parties scene. So what does it take to be successful in college? So take a little scrap of paper and write down 3 things that you think might be helpful or you should do to be successful in college. Got your list up? No. Keep going. We're almost out of time here. Give me 3. What do you think? 3 things that you need to do to be successful in college. Yes.
Oh, I thought you were like looking for you.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm asking you to write 3 down. Everybody got 3? Turn to a neighbor, introduce yourself, and compare your 3 to their 3. What do you got?
All right.
I was doing something on my hand, so.
Yeah.
Then I like to look at my notes, but I don't think there's something else, but. Yeah.
Okay, what'd you come up with? What things do you think need to be successful in this world we call college? Go ahead.
Socialize.
Socialize. Make friends. What else?
Show up to class.
Show up to class. What else? Ask questions. What else? Yes.
Prioritize, so
Okay.
prioritize, like, don't make classes everything, but also don't make extracurriculars everything as well.
Okay. So maybe balance is
Yeah,
another word
balance,
there.
yeah.
Yes, what you got? Management of time. Anything else? Everybody, as we'll talk about for second year dairy students, you got 24 hours in a day. How do you spend it? Everybody's got the same amount. You can't buy more. How do you spend it? So, and then figuring out, where do I waste time during the day? It's kind of odd that sometimes a lot of time goes by when we're not really paying attention. So we got a good list to start there. Academics like to study things. So Skip Downing went and he compared students that were doing well with students that were not doing so well, and came up with a list of things that he felt were the keys to success. So, Choices of Successful Students by Skip Downing said the successful students accept self-responsibility. They take care of what needs to be taken care of. They don't blame other people for their not getting things done. There was a very interesting excuse last night that came through to Professor Hayes involving a Tinder date. Again, prioritization. What are you going to do? Where are you going to spend your time? Time management. So, establishing self-responsibility. Discover self-motivation. How do you get things done? One of the things, sometimes it's hard for me to get going. ADHD can be a problem. So as long as I start doing something, maybe it's not what I need to be doing, but I do something, it gets me rolling. So sometimes over the summer, if I have a lot of things to do for the day, maybe the first thing I do to get myself moving is I put the dishes away. That leads to other things. So that's just one of the ways that I get things done. So master self-management, know what you need to do, know how much sleep you need, when you need to eat, learning when you're tired, you're dehydrated, and you can make those adjustments. Employ interdependence. What's another word for that? What's another word for interdependence? Socialize, right? Interdependence means we're counting on each other to get things done. So socialize, working together, forming, and we'll have your opportunity moving forward to establish study groups in this class. So I know when I was an undergrad, it was me against the professor. Like, you can't come up with a test that's going to beat me. Sure they did, but that was my attitude going in. And we used to get a group of people together and we'd work together so we could establish or attack that test. So gain self-awareness, knowing who you are, what's important to you, and how you get things done. Letting people know when you're not being a very nice person and apologizing for those things. Adapting a lifelong learning. Learning is hard. You have to put in effort. It just doesn't come. You have to put in an effort. You have to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to learn stuff? Do I need a group of people to go over the notes, or do I need time by myself? Do I rewrite the notes? Do I summarize the notes? I know if I went through my notes 3 times and then came up with a summary of that, I knew I'd do well on the exam. The hard part was getting those 3 days of review in. They had to be separated by a sleep cycle. Emotional intelligence, knowing how to interact, to read faces, to know when things are going right and wrong, and ultimately need to believe in yourselves. There's nobody in here that can't do this. I can teach anybody anything, but you have to ask me questions. I used to earn a lot of money as a tutor, as an undergrad. There were a lot of difficult cases that we fixed And we got things, but don't wait to the end. Start out early. We'll get things through. So how do you do all these things? What might be helpful? Get these things rolling. Probably going to need some sort of calendar system, right? Now, are you a person that prefers your phone? Or your person that's got some sort of hard copy list, notebook? I'm old, tend to lean toward paper things. I am trying to make some switches. List of things I need to do by category. Things I need to do around the house, things I need to do for this class, another class. Keeping those lists going, keeping them updated. Establishing a schedule. I know when I got to be in class, but when am I going to study? That needs to be defined as well, or whatever it is you want to achieve out of this. One of the things I used to do is I used to study at work. You get to the point where feeding calves, it doesn't require a lot of my brain power. But in high school, I'd put 5 different presidents on each hutch. I had to learn and memorize and be able to write down the presidents in order. I don't know why Coach Beatty wanted us to do that, but my brother did point out he was called Naptime Beatty for a reason, my history teacher. But he wanted that list. So as I went from one hutch to the other, I was able to write things down. Putting a list on your phone, putting a list on your dashboard as you're driving around. It's amazing how much time we waste in the car. If you're milking cows in a parlor, putting a list of things you want to remember, a summary of today's lecture at the end of the parlor. And every time you go down there, you take a look at it. Now, do you want to do that all the time? No, but those are opportunities. So get to know people, get involved with something that interests you, show up to class. Certainly my classes, you need to be here. I don't have a book. I don't teach out of a book. Where other classes, they go chapter 1 is this week, chapter 2 is next week. If you read the book and show up, take the tests, you do fine. I don't have that in this class. Is that at all helpful for you? I don't know. Okay, so it's there, I'll post it. So we'll finish up with, I hope, what is the science of nutrition? And I'm going to go with there. I can do that in 6 words. So what I need you to do to help me with this, Dr. Mooney's definition is just 6 words, but we need to give some thought. So I want you to think about what animals you have cared for. What did those animals do? And what did you food or feed? Did you feed them? So you can work by yourself, you can work in a group. What animals have you cared for? And what did they do and what did you feed them? I'll give you 5 minutes. If you need it. Well, it looks like we're getting close to done. What animals have you cared for? What do you got? Cows. What else? Goats. What else? Horses. What else? Pigs. What else?
Chickens.
Chickens. Somebody say turkeys? What else? Lambs. What else? What? Cats. What else? Dogs. What else?
Fish.
Fish. What else? Child. If not for you, they'd be dead, right? What else?
Yeah. Exactly.
There you go. What else? Anything? What are these creatures? What do they do? Eat? What else? Sleep? What else? What? Drink. What else?
Breathe.
What else?
Follow a pattern.
We'll say behave, socialize, get up at a certain time. My cat sleeps all day and annoys us all night, right? What else?
Use the bathroom.
We'll use the technical term void, right? What else? Probably, yeah, but we got enough to do. I'm just taking what you got. I'm trying to collect what you have. What have you fed these animals?
Young stock.
What else?
Drain. Grass.
What else? What else?
Minerals.
What else? What else? Anything on your list? So you've got the feeds over here, you got the animals over here doing things. We gotta somehow make those two things work together to be productive, or at least stay alive, right? So we deal with 6 nutrients. So when we look at our feed, we measure the amount of water in it. I will abbreviate carbohydrate CHO. I'll go back to that. Feeds have carbohydrate, protein, fat, minerals, and vitamins. We need to be able to quantify how much is in each of the feedstuffs we're dealing with. Whether we've got just straight water, we've got roughages, we got grains, complete feeds, or minerals. Given all these activities, they're going to need a certain amount of water. Each animal needs a certain amount of water, a certain amount of carbohydrate, a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of fat, minerals, and vitamins, depending on what type of animal they are and what they're doing. You could probably add in here also grow. And it's the interaction between the feed water and the water need, carbohydrate, protein, and the vitamins. We need to make what we provide match what they need. So in 6 words, we define the animal, what they are, what they're doing, how they work. We define the feed, 4 words. And then we define the interaction between the two. Define the feed, define the animal, define the interaction. So that to me is nutrition. If somebody says they're a nutritionist, they are working in at least one of these categories. For my PhD, I was working in the define the animal department. How do we define our feeds better? How do we define our animals better? How do we feed them? Define the interaction. And that might match. I think you've got that slide somewhere, maybe, or did I take it out? Yes, you do. You've got it in there. That you could overlay that diagram on what's up on the board. So we'll pick up there next time. Thank you for your patience. And we'll see you on tomorrow, 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock up at the dairy. Everybody got a ride. Okay, is there anybody at 4 that can help out? 4. So talk to Blaine, get you up there. So.
Yeah. Good deal. Great deal. All right, I'll see you later.